Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Shiro Spotlight. And I'm really excited to have this special guest with us today on the Shiro Spotlight. This is kind of a new friend for me, but a co-writer of mine who I feel like we've known each other for 20 years, if that makes any sense, but she knows it does. And I'm really excited that she's here with us today because she is promoting a new record. And I got to write a couple songs with her on this record, and I'm just really proud of the work she's done and the sound of this record. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She's originally from Colorado. She was born and raised beneath the Rocky Mountains. What a place to grow up. I mean, that is such a wonderful environment. And she knew she was destined for Nashville after performing, and I love this, Loretta Lynn's version of These Boots Are Made for Walking in her third grade talent show. So fast forward, she found that she had a knack for vivid songwriting, and she has this really vintage sounding voice, kind of raspy, kind of Emmylou Harris, Bonnie Raitt-ish, and she started to turn heads and chairs because she auditioned for The Voice. And she performed Trisha Yearwood's Heaven, Heartache, and the Power of Love before 11.9 million viewers. That's a lot of peeps. And she turned the chairs of Blake Shelton, one of my faves, Adam Levine, and Jennifer Hudson on season 13 of NBC's The Voice. And so she ended up being picked to be on Blake's team. When she left The Voice, she decided she wanted to rally her fans together, and she successfully crowdfunded her first EP called Life of the Party, produced by the incomparable Paul Worley, who produced like the Dixie Chicks, Lady A, Martina McBride, and also Biff Watson, who produced Don Williams and Crystal Gale. And she is what she likes to call herself, new nostalgia. And I really think she's a really interesting and unique emerging artist. And so I hope you will give a big-hearted, nostalgic welcome to Miss Kristi Hoopes.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we haven't seen each other in a while, and
No.
when we were working on writing songs for your record, we were seeing each other all the time.
I think the last time I saw your front porch was when I was playing Amazon driver and delivering all of my Life of the Party merch packages.
Oh yeah, and that was one of the most beautiful merch packages. It was so thought out, all the color schemes going together, the confetti, and I forgot I was going to wear my Kristi Hoopes shirt today, and I forgot to put it on. I'll put it on in honor of you later today. I'll put it on when we're done. Well, I'm really glad you're here. And I wanted to ask you, because it's always interesting when someone has a music life somewhat in another place other than Nashville. How different is the music scene in Colorado from Nashville?
It's different in a couple of ways. So as a general whole, Colorado has a pretty significant country scene, I would say.
Oh, really? Okay.
I would say the only other genre that really rivals it pretty heavily is EDM.
Huh.
So, for example, one artist that sells out Red Rocks every year he plays is Bass Nectar. So there's a pretty heavy dance, EDM, electronic community.
That's interesting.
And the DJ scene is pretty hopping in Colorado, particularly Denver.
Why do you think that's like that there?
It's it's what the kids they love listening to. We have
those kids.
I know. I feel like such an old soul. But we've got Fort Collins, CSU, and in Boulder, CU. So we've got two pretty major college campuses, and people want something to dance to, and EDM is usually the way it goes. But in terms of the venue performance scene, I particularly did mostly the county fair rodeo circuit. Oh, okay. And that really is kind of the primary way that you perform anywhere, unless you're doing coffee shops or things like that in the country world, at least in Colorado. It's county fairs, rodeos, that kind of thing. But one thing that Nashville has that's particularly unique is the writers' rounds.
Right.
That's not something that I ever did in Colorado. I don't know if it just wasn't there. I'm sure there were probably some people who emulated a Nashville writers round, but that's not something that really happens.
Is predominant. You know, when I've been in Colorado, you know, it's funny you would say that because I don't remember seeing any of that either.
That's kind of a Nashville special, you know.
But it seems like it would really be big in Colorado.
Yeah.
To have writers. And I mean, you know, I've known a lot of songwriters from Colorado. It seems like that would be a real thing that would happen there because it's so hippified.
Right,
you know?
right.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you this because I've known a few artists that were on The Voice, and I always ask them is, what did you learn from being on The Voice? What did you like about it, or what didn't you like about it, or what did you take away?
Yeah. The biggest takeaway for me, I think, is the notion that you just need to embrace your sound, your style, and who you are, because everybody on that show can sing.
Right.
But nobody can sing like you.
Right.
So don't.
And that's the whole idea of The Voice.
And that's the point, is don't waste your time trying to sound like somebody, you know, as great as it is to be influenced by artists, don't actively go out of your way to sound like them. Be you know, and embrace the way that you sound and your style. I think that was probably the most important thing that I learned. Secondarily, I would say relationships are everything. Yeah. And if you have the opportunity to be on a team, make close relationships with the people that are on your team, because you never know when you're going to collaborate with them in the future. Like, for example, Natalie Stovall was on our team, on Team Blake.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. And she's now a member of Runaway June.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I knew she was in Runaway June, but I didn't know she was on that team.
Yeah. She was on Team Blake. You know, and like, for example, everybody that was on Team Blake in the following January, we did a huge Super Bowl event in Minneapolis that our teammate Ezra Tuaolo organized, and we did a performance and all of us got together. So, you know, develop relationships with the people that you're around, because they're great friendships and become great collaborators. And it's just exciting to have a group of people cheering each other on.
Well, I always say, you know, like when I've done songwriter girl camps, I always say to everybody that attends, you know, like, this is your club. So you need to really look around and get the phone numbers and everything and really work at keeping in touch, because it's really hard to get into a club. You know, if you're lucky enough to be going along, like you're saying, with a team of people, I mean, the odds of everybody making it in that team in the same exact way are probably pretty difficult. But just the fact that you have people that all went through the same kind of thing together is important. And I just think that's the key in Nashville, you know, is relationships. And you know that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So what was it like working with Blake? Because of course I love Blake Shelton.
Yeah. You know, I don't think people realize you don't spend as much time with the coaches as you would assume. We really only would get maybe 15, 20 minutes with him at a time when we were filming. And that really was the extent of it. You spent more time with your personal vocal coach and the other members than you did with Blake himself.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you had a personal vocal coach.
I mean, it was great from, you know, the 15 minutes that I had with him. He was very sweet and and fun to be with. But
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you got to do that. That's that those kinds of experiences are so cool. I mean, you know, so many people just dream of doing something like that, and to be able to have done it is cool.
Yeah. And it was unexpected. I didn't think that was going to be something I would ever be a part of, just because I didn't think that I had the voice for it. Because a lot of times on American Idol or America's Got Talent, they're looking for people with these huge voices that can do these ridiculous runs, and that's just not me. That's not
kind of showboaty, you know.
Right. And you know, to each their own, but that wasn't necessarily me. And so I, you know, kind of raised my eyebrow when they wanted me to be on the show. And then, you know, it ties into that whole thing, embrace who you are. Yeah. There because they want somebody that also isn't a big belter and is a little more quiet and low. Well,
and let's think about how many artists there are out there that have been really successful that aren't big showboaty singers, like Emmylou Harris, like Joni Mitchell, like
Nora Jones. Yeah.
Lots of artists that have had great success. And so I think that's really, really interesting observation and good advice for people listening. So tell us a little bit about your concept of your new album, Life of the Party.
Yeah. I describe it as being unapologetically country, yet entirely unconventional.
It is that.
That's the best way that I can phrase it, because I love the notion of playing with diametrically opposed sounds and styles. Everything on the record is really rooted in country, but it's not what you would expect. For example, the title track and the name of the album being Life of the Party, you expect it to be this fun, energetic, playful song, and it's not. It's about somebody that is vulnerable and damaged and numb and struggling, and that's not what you think when you hear somebody described as Life of the Party.
And I remember when you brought that idea that day, and we started working on it, it was the opposite, and it was a lot of fun. But I mean, we were into all those weird concepts.
I was going to say, we wrote about a record talking to you like a friend, which is on Life of the Party.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be just ironic to play with this idea of being somebody that you're not and being unexpected. And I think every song on Life of the Party really is unexpected, because you don't know what you're going to hear from one song to the next. Don't Worry Mama versus Complicated are in completely different spheres, but they all play well together.
Oh, I think the record has a great thread through it. And is Complicated the one that's kind of disco-y?
It's disco. Yeah.
I loved that.
I love that song too. It's hard to pick a favorite. You can never pick a favorite.
But I know. They're so great. They're so great. So tell me what it was like to work in the studio with Paul Worley and Biff Watson, and how did you collaborate with them, since there were two producers on the record?
Yeah, they really worked as a team. The partnership between the two of them was just really cool to see, because they've known each other for so long.
Okay.
And they just get each other. Yeah. I mean, they would sit there and discuss. There was a lot of listening, I think, is what I would overall characterize what was happening in that space. Is they were really keen listeners, and they would listen to things over and over, and were just really meticulous.
Yeah.
And that was great to see, that they were focused, not necessarily on how flashy can we make the production. It was more of listening to see if we were actually serving the song the best that we could. And that was what I loved the most about working with them, is that they loved the songs first.
Yeah.
It wasn't about making a record that was a Paul Worley record or a Biff Watson record. It was, these are her songs. How can we serve them with the experience that we have? And them being industry veterans, they knew what they needed to do to make that happen. And I just appreciated them just listening and truly being intentional listeners.
Well, Paul Worley, I met him many years ago. I worked with an artist named Joylyn White, who was on Columbia Records, and he produced her record, or her records. Mm-hmm. And I just always thought that he was amazing. And Biff too. I mean, some of those demos that Biff helped you do when you were trying to select your songs, they could have been on a record.
Right.
They were so good. His playing is so great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always love to ask my guests this next question. Can you tell us your Stay Inspired story?
Yeah. It was probably a year ago, last March. I was still enrolled at MTSU. I was 2 months away from graduating. And I was working for the university. I was teaching at the time. I was also doing an internship. Mm-hmm. So I was stressed out of my mind. I mean, I was waking up at, 4 a.m. to get things done. And my days usually wouldn't end until probably about, probably 9 or 10. So I was really pushed to the max. And at that time, I was experiencing a lot of writer's block. I just was not finding myself being able to create like I normally did. I mean, on a regular basis, I'll just be humming a melody or something will come into my head and I have to jot it down in my notes, and that just wasn't happening for me. And that was incredibly frustrating because music is my escape. That's the place I go to take a breather, and I couldn't do that. And I felt really just frustrated with the fact that I couldn't write, I couldn't create, and I felt like I was just not succeeding the way that I wanted to. And so I pulled up in front of my house. I had just gotten home and I just broke down in the car, and I was just saying, God, why is it so hard for me to do something that, you know, that I normally am able to do? And I know I have so much potential. And right then and there, in 15 minutes, I wrote probably one of the most poignant songs I've ever written, and perhaps my most vulnerable, about being a woman in this industry and feeling like you have so much to give and just being desperate for somebody to look at that potential. And so I would just say, when you are pushed to the limit, that is when you can go further.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that pressure cooker that brings out the very best.
Right.
You know, I needed to feel that weight so that I could just push off and go to the next level. And from that, you know, I released a full record of music that I love. And having that moment really helped me to feel like I do have potential and I can keep going, and I've still got it. Because I think sometimes as an artist or songwriter, you know, you do have those moments where you kind of doubt yourself.
Right. Of course. We're
you know,
human.
I
We're
think
human.
in particular, like I suffer from the imposter syndrome horribly sometimes.
And what's that mean?
It's where you don't think that you are deserving of success that you have, or when success does happen, you just push it off, and you don't think that it's valid or that you're undeserving of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where, you know, when everything is going well and success is happening and great things are happening, you're like, oh no,
It's going to hit a wall. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's like where you don't trust in your ability, and you really kind of just like, nope, that's not meant for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
what's the name of the song?
It's called Potential.
Oh, that's good. Well, I hope I hear it sometime. That's cool. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So what do you think, pretend like you're talking about somebody else, what makes Kristi Hoopes different from other country artists?
Okay, couple of things.
I love that you're so confident that you can just roll right into that. It's so great because I have my opinion, but I want to hear what you say.
Okay, so number one, she makes country music for people who don't like country music. That is the number one thing that I hear from people whenever they listen to my music. And like, my fiance is the best. He sends his music to his friends who like don't listen to country music whatsoever.
Okay.
And their response is always, "This is country? I like this." And that's weird because I don't like country music. So I think that my greatest strength is broadening people's horizons as to what country music is. That it's not just honky tonk, or it's not just Merle Haggard or Waylon Jennings, or, you know, it's not one thing. And I think sometimes, particularly in country music, we try to boil it down to one thing and put it in a box.
Right.
And say that this is and this isn't. And I think that those conversations are just asinine.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't give people the opportunity to pull from their influences. Like Complicated, for example, that's a 4 on the Floor disco song.
Yeah.
But it's still very country.
It is.
So I would say I make country music for people who don't like country music. Second thing, I focus on making music that has a mood. I think mood is something that's really important to me. When I go into, you know, the writer's room with you, or when we're in the production side of things, I'm always thinking of, what mood does this put me in?
Yeah.
And what do I want the soundscape to feel like? I don't really focus on what instruments need to be a part of it. It's more of what mood does this create, and what do we need to do to fit a vibe, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean, because we've done that. And a big thing for me as a writer is, how does it make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of like the vibe thing, I guess, but for me more, it's about like an emotional level. Because if
Right.
it's not hitting me in some way, then because I'm really tough on stuff and on myself. So if it's not hitting
Yeah.
me on some level, then I know it's probably not going to hit anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. I'd say probably the other thing that would distinguish me from other country artists is I'm quiet. And what I mean by that, again, with the opposites,
Yeah.
um, my aura is really loud. My clothes are always extravagant. Like
Yes.
I love beehives and ridiculous earrings, and like
Big hats
I'm
and
wearing yellow eyeshadow right now.
yeah.
So
Wow.
so my aura and my extrovertedness, it's very loud, but my voice is quiet. It's it's very subtle and soft. And I think I really have embraced that as being part of me, because growing up in country music, I always heard women with these giant voices like Faith and Martina and Reba. There's just these really powerful voices. And I always wondered, is there a place for somebody like me who is a little more quiet and more reserved and can't necessarily do all that big belting? I just decided, well, if there's not a place, then I'm going to make it my
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And I realized that there's so much power in that small, still voice. There's so much power in what isn't sung,
Yeah.
and what isn't explicitly stated in country music. We're notorious for sometimes writing things that are very on the nose. And I
Yeah.
think I've found so much power in not saying as much and not singing as much and
Yeah.
just being subtle and soft. So I think there's power in the quiet. And
I think that's really true. And have you ever heard of the artist Peggy Lee? You know who
yes.
Peggy Lee is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Oh, yeah.
Peggy Lee supposedly, she developed that style of singing soft because she would sing in clubs and she'd be singing loud. Nobody was listening. So she thought, well, I'm just going to start singing soft. And then
Yep.
people started going, what'd she say?
Yep. Yep. And that's it, is that, you don't have to, I don't have to push and make myself heard. It's, I can just be me, and in the quiet, the people that want to gather, yeah, just like that, will come and they will listen. And I
Yeah.
think my best songs are those that are more vulnerable and quiet, like Don't Worry Mama and Life
Yeah.
of the Party and Ghosts of the Greats. Those are the ones that are the most impactful, and I think the ones that people walk away from like, wow.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm proud of you. I'm so happy for you. And I hope everybody immediately goes and buys the CD and streams it like crazy. And just the packaging was so beautiful. I love how you have the disco ball.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's really a great idea. That's really, of course, I love sparkly things, and you kind
Right.
of do too. You like
Right.
the woo.
But there again, it's a disco ball on front of a country record.
Yeah.
So what is this?
Yeah.
It's the mystery.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I always ask my guests these next few questions.
Okay.
And so I'm going to ask you, what is your power word and why?
Consistency. I think if there's anything I've learned in this business, there are a lot of talented people.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of inconsistent people.
Yes.
And sometimes the most talented person doesn't get the gold, not because they're not talented, but because they weren't willing to put in as much time, as much work as
Right.
the other person. So I think consistency is something that I really try to focus on in every aspect of my life, of just being present, being consistent, putting in the work.
Yeah.
Even when it's not necessarily front and center for everybody to see, the work that you do behind the scenes will come forward. But if you're inconsistent with yourself, you can't expect to be consistent if you get to a higher platform.
Right. Well, and the other thing too about being consistent, it also has to do with that whole idea of, thinking through and being clear, which you, in this whole conversation, we've been talking about that. And when I first met you, you were somebody that really knew who you were and knew what you wanted. And I think so many artists, they don't take the time to really know who they are. Just because you like a certain kind of music doesn't mean that's your music to sing.
Right.
You know, it's about digging and really finding out what you want to say. And
yeah. And
those are the artists that I think go farther because they've done that work.
Yep.
So
definitely.
Here's another question
Okay.
or statement. I always ask my guests to finish. The number one thing I'm grateful for today is
opportunity. I think every day I wake up with breath in my lungs is God saying that there's something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that there is the opportunity to contribute in this life in some way, whether it's just me waking up and I made breakfast for my fiance and I got the laundry done, like, you know, from the simplest things to I finished making my record today and I finished doing all this, you know, like just the fact that I have the opportunity to wake up every day and be a little bit better and learn something and love a little harder is what I'm grateful for, that God gives me the opportunity to do that every day.
That's great, Kristi. I love that. So what's next? Promoting the record, or what's next for you? Do you have plans to perform somewhere sometime next year somehow, or?
I hope so. I would love to be able to go out and do live shows, you know, especially with this great music. I feel like this is stuff that would be really fun to play with a band.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm going to be doing some virtual concerts, some
Skype. Oh, good.
And yeah, promoting the record, but I've already started writing and recording new music. We're tracking some stuff and I'm excited. I'm really leaning into more of that country funk. I think that's
I love it.
I think that's my lane. I think, you know, I just love the notion of putting the vulnerability and honesty of country songwriting with these great funky grooves.
Yeah.
Just I love the idea of putting that together, and I don't know that anyone's really doing that. And so I think that's where I want to be.
You want to live.
I want to live
in the funk.
Live in the funk.
Well, I love it. Yeah. Well, where can listeners find you and your album online? Where are you?
I'm everywhere.
All right.
But Spotify, Apple Music are probably the two biggest ones. I'm on Pandora. I mean, all the major streaming platforms, all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. And I post great recipes and cooking things on Instagram.
Oh, I have seen that.
You like to eat.
Yes. Well, that's always good. I love that. And when we can all convene again, you'll have to cook us something.
Oh yes, most definitely. But then KristiHoopes.com is where you can find all things Kristi Hoopes. And we actually just launched the store. So if you want to get a physical copy of Life of the Party or cool t-shirts that support local Tennessee artists, you should definitely consider checking it out.
Well, and the CD is beautiful.
Thank you.
I designed that myself. Sitting there. I know. That's really amazing. More work. More focus. I love it.
It's cool though. I love being able to be a part of everything that I do.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. It's always great to see you, and I hope we get to write again soon.
Yes.
And I hope you have a wonderful holiday, a wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And everybody stick around. We're going to be right back.